Money. It makes the world go around. Tails. Today, we can use things like Venmo and credit cards to pay for things, but for a long time, everyone's money pretty much looked like this. People have been making coins since around the 7th century BCE. Since then, they've been used nearly continuously in the West as currency. Sometimes these ancient coins resurface, and even though we can't use a Roman denarius or a Spanish piece of 8 to pay for a cup of coffee, this old money holds a treasure trove of information for archaeologists and historians. So let's dig through humanity's coin collection and learn 6 things money can teach us about the past. The most immediate thing you can learn from ancient coins is about coins themselves. I know, very meta. Coins are obviously just pieces of stamped metal that we all agree are valuable. People today instinctively connect coins with money. Think Scrooge McDuck diving into a pool of gold coins. But there is nothing inherent about stamped metal being money. Money is anything that people exchange for goods and services. People have used lots of different things as money, like shells, beads, and even cigarettes. So why have so many people made this to use as this? Weirdly, we don't know exactly when people started using coins. So far, the oldest coins we've found were minted in modern-day Turkey around 600 BCE. They were made of electrum, a combination of gold and silver, so they had plenty of value as is. And the stamp on their surface was the official seal of the state, saying that it was legit, and the seal also worked as a promise that the issuer would back the value of the coin. More importantly, that stamp meant that the issuer would buy the coins back from whoever had them, giving that person credit on their accounts or an IOU or something. The whole metal money idea took off, and soon a bunch of the nation-states of the Eastern Mediterranean were doing it. Before long, coins were everywhere, and archaeologists can use them to infer some surprising things about the ancient past, like the state of the economy. Take this coin, kept at the Worcester County Museum in the UK. It's a Roman, or at least Roman-inspired, silver coin dating from the 1st century CE. You'll notice it has a hole punched through it, and it's not the only one. Somewhere around 60% of old Roman coins found outside the region of Kent, dating to the Anglo-Saxon period, have been pierced or altered in some way. Why? Well, some historians think that after the Roman army left the islands, all their Roman money became pretty much worthless. But even if nobody on the islands wanted to use them as money, they were still nice to look at. So instead of using them for barter, people used their shiny coins as decoration. Turning coins into jewelry is a big sign that your economy isn't using the metal coins as currency, and that you've shifted away to something else entirely. But you can also see evidence of economic trouble in other Roman coins. For instance, there's a Roman denarius from the 1st century BCE, minted during a tough moment for Rome. The Republic was at war, in debt, and at risk of going bankrupt. And researchers have found evidence of this crisis in the coins minted at the time. See, all these Roman coins were supposed to be made of pure silver, but it looks like by 87 BCE, the Roman mint was deliberately adding between 5 to 10% copper to the mix. This meant the coins literally weren't worth what they had been a few years ago. Turns out, inflation's been a problem for a while. But coins tell us a lot more than the state of the economy. We can use them to gain insight into what metals people had available to them, how advanced their metallurgy was, and even where those metals were coming from. Take a silver tetradrachm from ancient Athens. For a long time, researchers had assumed that early Athenians got this metal from silver mines in northern Greece, since they were right there and it makes sense. Why get imported silver when you've got silver at home? Except it looks like they didn't use those mines, or at least not at the beginning. A recent analysis of the tiny levels of things like lead, zinc, and gold in some of the oldest Athenian coins suggests that they were made from silver that was mined as far away as Spain, France, Romania, and Turkey. The Athenians were only able to get control of local mines and start producing their own silver around the time they started making their iconic owl coins, meaning that early Athens would have had to import its way to influence. And coins can even tell us what metals weren't around. Take a Spanish real, dating from between 1772 and 1825, found in Jamestown. You might be wondering what Spanish money is doing in the burgeoning United States, and no, it's not pirates. Turns out when European colonizers came to North America, they didn't just bring smallpox and a superiority complex, because while what's now the United States was rich in a lot of resources, they didn't have any precious metals for the early colonizers to mine. And when the US first became a country, there wasn't any metal to use to make Americoins, so without a way to make their own coins, people just used the money from other countries. That only changed in 1857 when Congress banned the use of other money and declared the US dollar as the only legal tender in the US. All I'm saying is we could have gone with Americoins. It does roll off the tongue a little more than dollar. Hey, speaking of government, let's talk about what coins tell us about both politics and propaganda. Coins were almost always made by people with power, and the images that powerful people chose to stamp onto those coins can tell us about their priorities or even their fears. The first faces that went on coins were, of course, the gods. Who wouldn't want a little deific help with their business transactions? And for a while, it was only gods on currency. The first coin to have a head of an actual person rather than that of a god was the Persian commander Tissaphernes, who lived around 400 BCE. These portraits of actual humans give us some idea of what powerful people looked like back in the day, and also what they were trying to accomplish. Take a denarius from the year 44 BCE. Julius Caesar was the first living Roman to put his head on a coin. This was a big power play, since at the time it was really taboo to put the face of a mortal on coins. He then upped the stakes by putting the words "dictator for life" on the coin, which was technically true since he was a dictator for the rest of his life, but that victory lap may have been a bit premature since he was assassinated just days after his dictator coin was minted. While this was probably as far from a lucky penny as anyone may ever get, he did set a precedent. With the rise of the Roman Empire, emperors took to putting their heads on coins, which is a trend that other monarchs continue to this day. And that's great for archaeologists, since it means that we know who was in charge of the place when the coin was made. Like, there are 4 different rulers from the 8th century that we literally only know about because they showed up on Anglo-Saxon coins. They can also show us shifting values. One of the best examples of this is how French coins changed over the progression of the French Revolution. Coins from 1789, when the revolution began, show a portrait of King Louis XVI surrounded by the words, "King by the grace of God." When Louis was imprisoned in 1792, he still got to be on the coins since he was technically the king, but instead of bragging about his divine right to rule, the coins were instead inscribed with "the nation, law, and the king." I imagine the "in that order" part is silent. Louis was executed the following year, and French coin makers stopped putting the head of state onto their coins. At least they did until Napoleon seized power later that century, and then we're back to faces on money. I guess in a coin toss, Napoleon would be choosing heads. If you've ever thrifted a cool jacket and found the previous owner's spare change in the pocket, you might know something about this next one. Because just like that change tells you a bit about the last time the jacket was worn, archaeologists can use ancient coins to figure out how old a dig site might be. Like, if one of the coins in that sick jean jacket was a penny from 1987, you know that your lucky thrift find had to have been worn sometime during or after 1987. And this works in the more distant past too. For instance, there's a trove of 22 coins that researchers recently found in the tunnels near an ancient village in Galilee. Full disclosure, at the time we're writing this script, this paper hasn't been peer-reviewed, but the findings from their press releases are cool enough that we want to talk about it anyway. Archaeologists knew that the Jewish people in the area would use these tunnels to hide when things got violent, especially during 2 noteworthy uprisings against the occupying Romans in the 1st and 2nd centuries CE, which didn't really end well for those Jewish people, but it seems like people kept using those tunnels for centuries after those 2 losses. We know this because those coins were made in the 4th century CE, well after the 2 noteworthy uprisings. The existence of these coins suggests that the tunnels were also being used during the 3rd and final Jewish revolt that started midway through the 4th century CE. Jewish people could hide here, regroup, pray, all out of sight of the occupying Roman military. And oddly enough, using coins to date sites can even be more accurate than other methods, like carbon dating. That's because carbon dating is best suited to stuff that's a lot older than coins, so it doesn't tend to work as well on material that's only a few hundred years old. You can get the century just about, but decades are harder. But coins with dates on them can help narrow that window down. Recently, archaeologists working at an Inuit site in Quebec were able to use a coin to work out that the site was probably active sometime in the 1630s, but that's just too young for carbon dating alone to close the gap. Lucky for them, someone at the site way back then threw away a French coin showing the head of Louis XIV, which was minted between 1632 and 1634. Although the Inuit who lived there clearly didn't think much of this coin because the archaeologists literally found it in a trash heap. Guess they felt it wasn't worth much, kind of like how we think of pennies today. And while using coins to date sites can be really helpful, it's not always foolproof. Case in point, the Maria Theresa thaler. These thaler coins were first minted under the rule of Empress Maria Theresa of the Holy Roman Empire, but over the years they became the currency du jour in many parts of the Middle East and the Horn of Africa. The Austrian Mint continues to make exact copies of this coin to this day, including the date 1780 and the Empress's headshot. So if you found Maria Theresa's face in your jacket pocket, you can be confident that the jacket was worn after the year 1780, but it might be hard to tell much more than that. Before we get to the next one, it's time for us to earn a few coins of our own with a quick ad break.
As a SciShow viewer, you probably love engaging with new ideas and learning outside of a classroom, like with Brilliant. Brilliant helps you strengthen your math skills with lessons in quadratics that show you how to factor, graph, and solve quadratic equations. And you'll be actively learning all this stuff because they've packed over 700 exercises into just 55 lessons. You definitely won't be falling asleep in a lecture hall. After all, Brilliant is made for anyone from age 10 to 110. To learn for free on Brilliant for a full 30 days, go to brilliant.org/scishow, scan the QR code on screen, or click on the link in the description. They're also giving you unlimited daily access to everything on Brilliant with 20% off an annual premium subscription. And thank you to Brilliant for supporting this SciShow video.
Aside from telling the age of a dig site, coins are a great way to look at ancient trade routes. Since the ancient world didn't have those airport kiosks where you could exchange your currency, that meant travelers and merchants ended up paying for goods using their own country's money, even when they were way over the border. For instance, archaeologists working at a dig site in northwestern China uncovered Roman coins from the 1st century CE, which means that ancient Rome and China were connected through whatever series of trade networks stretched across Eurasia. We've since learned that Romans were obsessed with Chinese silk. The two groups probably didn't directly interact, but they were connected through a series of interconnected trade routes stretching all across Eurasia, mainly to bring fancy fabric to the European masses. What would you call that? Some sort of Silk Road? It turns out lots of people we didn't tend to think of as being connected were trading with one another. In the 1980s, archaeologists in Sweden discovered a hoard of Islamic coins at a Viking burial site dating back to the 9th century, meaning they too were connected through trade networks, whether direct or indirect. More recently, a study uncovered a previously unknown trade network that ran through Southeast Asia in the first millennia. The researchers looked at the similarities between almost 250 silver coins found in several different countries. They all shared certain religious motifs, like a rising sun, which made the researchers suspect they may have been connected. In fact, they were really connected. Two of the coins, one found in Bangladesh and the other in Myanmar, were probably made by the same person, or at the very least, using the same dye. Talk about your art reaching a wide audience. Our last example is one of the other worst things to bring up at a dinner party besides money and politics: religion. If you compare coins from Islamic cultures and Christian ones, you might notice an odd difference. During the Middle Ages, most of the coins from the Muslim world don't have any images on them whatsoever, just calligraphy. And we pretty much know exactly when this became a trend. In 696 CE, Caliph Abd el-Malik, 5th Caliph of the Islamic Empire, minted the first coin in hundreds of years that had no symbolic images on them whatsoever. One theory as to why he did this was to separate his empire and its values from that of the Christian Byzantine Empire. Byzantine coins often portrayed the emperor du jour alongside Christian images, but not a lot of writing, since the people in the empire spoke a lot of languages. These new text-only Islamic coins were a flex because they showed that Arabic had become a uniting language for their empire, and that people who used the coins were literate. Which isn't to say that the Caliph didn't want you to know he was in charge. The coins also said that he was God's deputy, so taking his face off the coins wasn't exactly about humility. At least if your money comes right out and says it, nobody needs to offer you a penny for your thoughts. From spreading political messages to making fancy decorations, there's a lot that people have done with coins throughout the centuries. And clearly, that's been great for us today, since those coins give us so many insights into the people who made them. Our quarters aren't made of silver, and our pesos aren't gold, but that doesn't mean they won't have value to future historians. Think about what our many different coins will tell people about what we valued and why. But let's be real, it's mostly going to be pennies. So many pennies. It was tails!